Good morning. That's the extent of my Danish, I'm sorry to say. But good morning and welcome to our event. We couldn't pick a more important topic for the IT leadership community, the business leadership community, as we go into 2016, this whole idea of digital transformation. I have a feeling we're going to wear out that phrase about as quickly as we've worn out cloud and all of the other, big data, all of the other mantras of our time. But of course, it is a vitally important mission. I noticed, thank you to T-Systems, they put these magazines on everyone's table. I don't know if you saw this, but the cover is What Keeps CIOs Awake at Night. And there's a lot. That could be a very long list, I think, as we think about 2016. What I want to do in the next few minutes is really just kick off our day, a long day of discussion and hopefully stimulating ideas and discussions, just talking about, maybe flip it around, not what keeps CIOs awake at night, but really talk about what should CIOs be thinking about and what should CIOs be prioritizing as they help their organizations march toward digital transformation and leadership in a digitally transformed, or we call it DX, in a DX economy. And so what I decided to do is share with you this morning a research project that we do at IDC every year. As Trina just mentioned, we have about 1,100 analysts worldwide, and they cover every corner of IT you could possibly imagine. All of the technologies, all of the industries, every region and major country in the world. So we've got all of these analysts looking at small pieces of the IT market. So I work with them each year to put those pieces together and try to put together a picture of what is the whole IT industry. And your organizations, as you use IT, what is that going to look like in 2016 and for the next few years ahead? And all with the idea of can we make smart decisions for our companies? So let me lead into this. The exercise we go through is really a predictions exercise. What are the big events and trends for 2016? And we use this methodology we call a Futurescape. We select, we put into the process probably 50 or 100 different topics and ideas, and then out at the end comes 10 topics that we think are the most important ones for the IT leadership community. And don't get too worried about this chart over here. It's a graphic we use that tries to show, it's almost a radar screen for IT and line of business leaders around technology for the year ahead. Looking at the topics, of course, you can see third platform IT and data pipelines and cognitive technologies. The x-axis is how quickly does this need to rise on your radar screen, on your priority list. And by the way, the answer is very soon for all of them, because it's only a 36-month x-axis, yes? And then the y-axis is really just trying to say what scope or how big a range in the enterprise does this technology trend impact? How broad an initiative do you need to have in your enterprise to make it work? And so some things you can, so innovation capacity, that's our term for building up your team of developers, working on digital transformation coding. Obviously, you can do that on a very small scale within the organization. So that's down on the lower end. Putting cloud at the core of your IT operations, that's a broader initiative. And of course, digital transformation strategy led by the CEO is right at the top, right? So that's about the whole enterprise. So anyway, what we consider these 10 things almost is, as I say here, it's like a blueprint for IT leaders to follow when they're trying to think about what should I do, what should I focus on in the next 12 to 36 months as I help my company use technology to establish or to retain leadership in our own industry, whether that's retail or health or manufacturing or energy, you name it. Okay, so that's the framework of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to address 8 of these 10 areas to focus on. Now, I will mention, if I have time, I'll mention the two others. So I won't keep you into too much suspense, but we're going to focus on 8 of these this morning. And so what I want to do is start off by looking at almost the whole framework that we think about when we think about the future of IT in 2016. So before we get into the predictions, what is our frame of reference? And I hope that this picture or some form of it is not new to any of you. So we've talked at IDC for maybe the past 5 or 6 years about this idea of the third platform, that in the IT world, we have moved from, there was the mainframe era, the first platform of technologies that developers built things for businesses with. And then the second platform was, of course, client-server, PC, relational databases, and so forth. And that what is happening now in our world, when you think about cloud and mobile, social, big data, 3D printing, augmented reality, IoT, cognitive technologies, and on, these technologies fit together. They are part of a whole, the new collection of foundation technologies that the developers will use for the next 20 years of killer apps, right? So we lived for the last 30 years on the client-server platform, and we're going to live for the next 20 or 30 on this set of technologies, right? So that's all the third platform means. We started out talking about these 4 big ones in the middle: cloud, mobile, social, big data. Those really were kicking off in 2006, 2007, really, was when they started emerging. And now, as Trina mentioned a moment ago, we're adding 6 more areas of technology that we think are kind of the fundamental building blocks for CIOs and your organizations to build new solutions. And you can see them up there. And by the way, these 10, they're not going to be the only ones. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? We'll see another, there'll be 12, there'll be 14. This, you might say, palette of colors that the artists, the developers will use to build valuable new business systems is expanding. So, but that's the technology area. And then, of course, at the top is just our way of saying, why do we need these technologies? What are the developers going to be doing with these technologies? The main purpose is to help invent new ways of doing business, digital transformation, which is really about using these technologies to create new value, either through new offerings in your industry or through new business models or through new relationships with customers, with suppliers, with partners, right? So technology foundation is changing, third platform, and of course, what we're doing with technology is changing, which is about digital transformation, or DX. Okay, so that's kind of our language, our framework as we go through these 8 predictions this morning. Okay, so I've spent a lot of time on the prologue. Let's get right to the predictions, right? So the first area is right at the top, and that is, what is driving change and investment in IT in 2016? And there's no question that digital transformation initiatives from the business side of the organization is driving more and more of what we need to do with IT, right? I would argue that in 2016, just about the only thing that matters that's driving IT decision-making are digital transformation initiatives. And you can see here that our first prediction in this area is that by 2018, the end of 2017, we predict that 2 out of 3, 2/3 of the global 2,000 CEOs are going to have digital transformation, or DX, at the center of their company's strategy for growth and for profitability, right? And I think you can see it already. You just have to open up the newspaper or go to your favorite news site, and you can see. I was at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas a few weeks ago, and it's amazing. Yes, there were all of the technology brands, but there were a lot of other corporate, you might say Global 2000 brands, all of the car guys, and all of financial services companies were there, and pharmaceutical companies were there. And why were they there? They were there because they're there to explore, all these new gadgets. They're there to explore machine learning and AI. They're there to market their own technology savvy to the world because they understand that their ability to say, hey, we're a digital transformation leader in our industry is valuable. That has impact on the stock price. But it's not just about what the CEOs are thinking about. Digital transformation is going to have other evidence of how important it is. So we put together something we call a maturity scape. A maturity scape. You can tell we like Futurescape, maturity scape. We like scapes. But the maturity scape, as you can imagine, is a maturity model to define different stages of maturity in an organization that's doing digital transformation. And I won't give you all of the details that are under each of these 5 stages, but it's the usual. The guys on the left are kind of the losers, right? They don't get it yet. And then the ones on the right, they're the rock stars. Right, so we surveyed a large sample of enterprises and try to assess, well, where did they fit? Where are enterprises now on that journey to digital transformation? And you can see about 64% are really just in the early exploration stage, right? They definitely are embracing digital transformation, but they're still in early stages. And only about 22% are in the more advanced stages. We're predicting that by the time we get to 2020, about 50% of enterprises will be in those top 2 areas. So the next 5 years is a time frame when you and your peers, your competitors, will be driving a lot of advances and progress in digital transformation. Some other points that relate to this, by the time we get to 2020, about 50% of your IT budget will be directly tied to digital transformation initiatives, which is that's quite a statement because we all know that the legacy, there's a lot of money spent on maintaining the legacy. So getting half of your IT budget on the new stuff in a relatively short amount of time, that is a rapid shift and emphasis. One other important thing that comes out of this focus on digital transformation that impacts all of us in this room is that you can imagine by the time we get to 2018, we're predicting that worldwide about 45% of IT budgets will be owned and controlled by line of business executives, so 45%. Now, in the US, that'll be 60% by the time we get to 2018. And I'm sure in Denmark, an advanced country when it comes to use of technology, it'll be a lot closer to the 60 than the 45, if not higher than 60%. So, why is this? I think we all understand. More and more of the technology is not about, the underpinnings, the plumbing, you might say. It's about the operating infrastructure for the whole company. It's about how different parts of the company actually operate. So the VP of, Research and Development considers these technology systems, this is the way we do drug discovery, or this is the way we do supply chain if you're in your manufacturing or retail. So of course, they feel like they need to own it. Does this surprise anybody? We're already living with this, right? This has already been happening. So I think the challenge to the CIO with digital transformation is, what is the role? How is the role changing? And we'll have a lot of discussion about that today. So I'm not going to step all over that topic, but I will say this, that somebody asked me yesterday at an event, in a digital transformation world, what is the thing that's keeping a CEO awake at night? And I said, the biggest thing is that being able to manage that transformation, get the organization to the new model, a new operating model, a new financial model, while still keeping alive the existing organization and bringing it along to that future, right? That whole balance of we know where we need to go, we know where we are now and we're not anywhere near there. How do we go there? It's like crossing a chasm, and you can't cross it with 3 hops, right? You've got to really have you've got to build a ramp, right? And so I think that's the same issue for a CIO. People talk about 2-track or 2-mode IT. To be honest, I don't really believe in that. There's only one IT, and that's the IT we need to be to support digital transformation. That's one mode IT. And the rest, bimodal, that's just a way of saying we have to bring along, the things, and we have to transform the things that are valuable to the company, right? So to me, and I guess key thing here is be very good at understanding the business priorities. That's not a new job, but a very important one, and of course, play well with others. That's going to be a very important skill as well. Okay, let's move to technology. That's kind of the basically simple statement. Business focus on technology is a key part of business strategy. Haven't we all wished for that for decades? That's becoming reality. That's changing what IT needs to look like. The demands on your organizations, on the IT organizations, from the digital transformation teams are changing, right? So some predictions here. By 2018, 50% of enterprises' IT spending will be for third platform technologies. Remember the ones I talked about? That's cloud, that's mobile technologies, it's big data analytics, it's increasingly IoT, it is cognitive and AI, it is, of course, security. I didn't mention security up there, but third platform security. So we're talking about, really big data-driven threat analytics, biometrics, really scalable approaches to security. So we have to make that a big part of our IT organization in a very short order, very soon. Some of you may have said, well, Frank, you said that 50% of IT spending by 2020 is going to be on digital transformation, DX. So why are we seeing 50% of IT spending on third platform technologies 2 years earlier, by 2018? And I think the answer is clear, is that organizations are using cloud and mobile and the rest not just to do the new things, right, the digital transformation projects. They're also using it to revitalize and transform the existing systems. So think about all of you as you're looking at that next ERP or CRM or supply chain app. What are you doing? You're probably considering, should we be using SaaS as our core system? Should we or shouldn't we? And so that all is coming a lot quicker, I think. And certainly if you look at the financials of many of the players in the industry, this is a transition they're trying to balance too. How do they go from the traditional models to the new? So it's coming quickly. This will give you kind of an economics view of third platform versus second. Now, the second platform and second and first, really, this is the traditional or legacy technologies. Spending from 2015 to 2020, IT budget spending on things that aren't cloud, mobile, social, big data, and those other technologies, that is shrinking. It's shrinking by 5% a year, right? So that's a recession. If your IT organization is focused on the legacy as the core of what you're doing, your discussions with the CFO are going to become more and more painful over the next several years. However, the top two areas, that's really the light blue are the cloud, mobile, social, big data, kind of the core technologies, and then we broke out the gray part are the innovation accelerators. But you put those two together, they're the third platform technologies. And spending by organizations on those technologies is growing by almost 13% a year, right? So that's boom time. So if you're a vendor, by the way, thank you to our sponsors, the message is clear. You better get as much of your product mix as possible into the third platform. Right? But what if you're a CIO? What if you're an IT executive? And I would argue that the reason you're seeing this difference in growth is what we just talked about, is that the corporation is asking us to do projects that are around, again, next generation retail or autonomous automobiles, if you're in that industry, or about, much more dynamic supply chains, faster drug discovery and pharmaceuticals. These are driving investments in the third platform technologies. These initiatives generally can't be done with second platform technologies. So it is this business priority we just talked about a moment ago that are driving us all to the third platform. So what does this mean? To me it's pretty obvious. It means that as IT leaders in an enterprise, we have to lean in to the third platform technology base. I would overweight my technology investments toward the new technologies. I would no longer be thinking about competency, being competent in the cloud or mobile. We're past that. We now have to master. We have to master these third platform technologies. Or what? I think we know or what. Or our organizations will go outside. There are lots of external providers of these technologies. If we aren't keeping ourselves relevant, being masters in our own organization of these key technologies. These technologies aren't going to be just about keeping IT running. I think if you think about the digital transformation connection, our mastery of the third platform technologies is required to keep our businesses running as we look in the future. So, to me, these two things together are really the kind of at the top of the radar screen for the CIO. You know, what business priorities do I need to understand within my industry and adjacent industries that my company is going to put priority on? And then what do I need to do with my team? What technologies, what skills, what partnerships with vendors do I need to have to deliver on that DX agenda? The next three prediction areas I want to drive into the technology a little bit, so the third platform. So I'm going to talk about one. The first one is cloud, which is really, to me, that's the most established of the third platform technologies. And then I'm going to talk about two others that are really just emerging, but they're emerging much faster than I think most of the market understands and appreciates, and I think are going to be very important catalysts for innovation within your own organization. So let's start with cloud. So we talk about this as cloud as the core. This is the new core of IT. Of course, Amazon Web Services came out with their storage service, S3, in 2006. That's 10 years ago, right? And certainly SaaS has been around, for a long time. Salesforce.com and others. Google Apps, I think, was 2006 or 7. And of course, the first platform as a service, Force.com, that was September of 2007. So you can see a pattern. This is not new technology anymore. This has been with us for a decade. And so our predictions here, by 2018, at least 50% of all of your infrastructure-related spending and your software-related spending is going to be on cloud versions. What I mean by that is on infrastructure as a service and on SaaS. Right, and that's quite a statement. Remember I said, 50% of your IT budget driven by these new DX initiatives in 5 years? Well, in 3 years, we're going to see half of these two big buckets of IT saying, well, I could buy the traditional model, the boxes, or I could buy a disc, DVD with the software and have somebody install it, or I can consume it as SaaS or infrastructure as a service. So adoption of cloud. In the title of this topic was talking about bringing digital transformation to scale. One of the themes you'll hear over and over this morning is scaling way up. So we're going to be seeing a tripling of enterprises' IT budget in what they spend on cloud services. Other related, by 2018, almost 2/3 of enterprises' IT assets will be sitting in a third-party provider's site. Now, a good portion of that is cloud, not all of it. There still is co-location and, traditional outsourcing and managed hosting and so forth, but obviously a large and growing portion will be cloud. But think about that. 2/3 outside, 1/3 inside. That means hybrid, right? I have to get to be a master. My enterprise IT organization better be able to master the visibility, the management, the control, the governance of a hybrid cloud, non-cloud, on-premise, off-premise, multi-clouds. I'm going to have multiple cloud service providers out there. We know that. I may have an enterprise cloud in my own data center. So developing those skills will be very important. So that some of that is tooling. Some of that is about things like vendor management becoming more important, and kind of a new generation of vendor management, one that's much more dynamic, real time. Obviously, pricing is much more granular now and fluid, so it's no longer, let me just cap my budget and sit on it for the next year or two. I can reduce my spending and I can increase my spending much more dynamically. So this is a totally new IT world we need to get very good at. And if you think about vendors, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but vendors, we have to watch them very carefully because, of course, yes, people sometimes, say, okay, well, the vendor's on that side of the table and I'm on this side of the table. But let's face it, vendors, it's a partnership because we're dependent. They depend on us, but we depend on them too. And so it's going to be very important to see, are my suppliers going with the market? Are they leading the market in that transition to the third platform? And in this case, to cloud. Are they among the leaders in developing and delivering what I need as a cloud service? What's the advice around cloud? I think it's pretty clear. Developing team skills around cloud, both on-prem and off-prem, are, in my view, priority number one. Again, because that is the new foundation. I would say that cloud first has to be the mantra for any IT leader in an enterprise today. Again, doesn't mean it's cloud always. There may be some situations where cloud may not fit. And of course, there are different models of deployment of cloud. On-prem, off-prem. Off-prem could be dedicated to you or it could be shared. And of course, there are economics and management implications to all that. But I'd say cloud first has to be the way we operate. And as I said just a moment ago, that has to be the way our suppliers operate. Don't wait for your suppliers to go to the cloud. If they're taking their time getting there, don't wait. Don't wait for them. You have to get there for your own business and your own enterprise, and you may have to need to critically assess their ability if they are too slow in moving there. Now, the next two technology areas, as I mentioned, are really more an emerging area, but they are so important to leaders in enterprise IT because they're becoming very important for innovation around business and in many markets now. So the first one, of course, is, I call it the intelligent edge. That's just a description, but people often talk about the Internet of Things, of course. So this is really about the incredible variety of devices that's emerging. Every day, new gadgets. Now, I don't know. I've been around IDC for a long time, decades now, and I've always been a gadget guy. This is a wonderful time to live if you're a gadget person. And again, having been to CES, I had to keep putting two different hats on. I was the IDC analyst trying to understand what does this mean for the market, and then there was me. I was thanking God that no one was selling anything there. They're just showing them because I would have gone through our entire family savings. But amazing things. Again, internet connected, of course, home thermostats and refrigerators and televisions and cars, but also tennis rackets and toothbrushes. Anything that can be connected to the internet, you better believe is being connected to the internet. Right. So what does this mean for a CIO or an IT leader or a line of business executive? It means very important things. Two things are happening in the IoT world. So one is this explosion in the things. So we're predicting, but by the time we get to 2018, there'll be 22 billion of these smart interconnected things out there, both consumer and industrial. And it's going to rise to over 30 billion by the time we get to 2012. So enormous. It has implications for IT, absolutely, and for networks. I'm sure T-Systems is thinking carefully about this, and the software suppliers as well. But the other thing, in addition to the gadgets, what I think is at least as important and maybe more important is we're going to see a growth, a ramp up over the next few years in the developer community grabbing a hold of these devices and saying, hey, what could we do with these? Can we build some new apps, some new services that take advantage of the existence of these devices to sense what's going on in a customer's environment or in, a supply chain or a factory floor or a retail store or you name it, on a highway? And can we gather that data? Can we gain insights and generate some new decisions and new value based on that data? So this idea of developers building up around the Internet of Things is going to be one of the most important things that happens in 2016. And of course, it's expensive to connect, number one, to buy all of these things for an enterprise if you're deploying them, smart meters or, in smart vehicles. This is all, smart equipment in retail stores. We predict that by 2018, there'll be $725 billion of budget. Again, you can thank the stars that, probably won't come out of the IT budget, that could come out of, the retail, operations budget perhaps in some cases, or fleet management, that kind of thing. But here's an important thing. We predict there'll be about $542 billion in pull-through IT spending. What does that mean? That means that networks need to be upgraded in order to support all that connectivity and that traffic. Those devices are going to generate an enormous amount of data, whether those are disks and then servers, of course, to crunch that data, whether they're in your own data center or you're paying by the millisecond, from your favorite cloud service providers. That is going to be a cost as well. And of course, it's going to have an impact in other parts of IT, not just the infrastructure, but of course around the security, right? So really this intelligent edge is the new perimeter for all of us when we think about that wonderful nightmare, the recurring nightmare for CIOs of a breach, security breach. We predict, an increasing number of attacks will come through these devices. Honestly, as I look at this, I've got a prediction to make right now that when we make this prediction, when we update it next year, it won't be 10% in 2020. Okay, it's going to be a lot higher than 10%. But you get the idea. So what does this mean for IT leaders? To me, it means, number one, I would have one of my staff go to CES, okay, every year, because we need to know for our organization what is emerging that could wind up being a very important new edge for my enterprise's ability to deliver the latest generation of services to our marketplace, right? So that visibility is important. I would say around developers, I would be thinking in very short order, very soon, to start thinking about devoting as many developer resources to IoT solutions as I do to mobile solutions, right? Today's mobile solutions, smartphones and tablets. This, of course, is going to vary by industry and your own company, but that's the scale, that same order of magnitude. And of course, think about security or infrastructure. I would immediately put together a team to do an IoT impact study on what is the growth of IoT going to mean for the rest of our IT organization. Yes, staff, developers, but also just our expenditures and what our infrastructure needs to look like. So, very important. Now, the second of these two emerging things in 2016 that I think, again, need to be more to the center of your radar screen than at the edge is we borrowed a term from one of the market players, cognitive, but if you don't like that, let's just call it AI, or deep learning, or machine learning. The whole idea of the ability to take data, analyze it, and see the connections, develop assumptions and algorithms, perhaps, and recommendations out of that data, and then to keep feeding more data in and get better at learning, right? So really, these are learning systems. This seems science fiction, or it seemed like, major vendors' marketing campaigns just a couple of years ago. Go to CES or look at any of the venture-backed startups. I did a survey of about 1,000 venture-backed technology startups last year, and you won't believe the percentage that are using machine learning right now to speed up drug discovery in pharmaceutical, or to improve customer service or field service. You name it. Machine learning was the hidden star at CES behind all the Toyota and Ford and GM and the rest that were showing their self-driving, the autonomous cars. Guess why those cars can improve so quickly? They can improve within 4 to 6 hours dramatically. Their ability to avoid each other and obstacles. Why is that? It's because those cars are all connected to AI systems, machine learning systems in the back that are aggregating all of the learnings, and that makes all of them smarter very quickly. So this is a revolutionary technology. Our predictions are that, in 2015, about 1% or less of developers embedded AI or machine learning APIs or services in their apps. By the time we get to 2018, it'll be over 50. Over 50% of developer teams will have some experience in using these services, these AI services. So to me, this is a big ramp-up period in this area. And again, why is it important? There's a U.S. example. I apologize for that one, but our analysts covering this area say that just in the U.S. alone, that it will generate over $60 billion worth of productivity improvements. Now, why is that? It's because in industries like health and customer service, public safety, this is about moving those smart decisions right out to the moment of decision, out at the edge of where enterprises deal with their marketplace. Whether that's citizens in public safety or whether that happens to be, an associate in a retail store. It's about the next best decision. What is the next best decision given the current circumstances and who this customer is and what their history has been? And yes, we think this is going to be happening mainly in the cloud. AI is a very storage and compute intensive exercise. And we are seeing a lot of aggregation of these advanced developer services around the cloud players. So again, you notice 60% of cognitive use cases will be powered by these 4 vendors, but there's 40%, there's plenty of room for everybody else. I know SAP is looking very carefully at AI, Oracle as well, others. So anyone who's in the world of software, and particularly enterprise-focused software, this is going to define a totally new, you might say, a third platform 2.0 level of enterprise solutions, ones that are connected to both IoT, so they're always aware, and they are connected to machine learning or AI. They are collectively intelligent and learning. So always aware, collectively intelligent, a totally new class of solutions. And guess what? Those are the ones you're going to be needing to help your enterprise develop in your industry. Okay, the next 2, we've got 3 to go, and I'm going to buzz through them because Trina said there's a trap door up here somewhere, and I'm not sure where it is. But these next 2 are kind of above the technology. They're really about large use cases or use domains where we think there are going to be radical changes in 2016 through 2018. So this first one is about something we call industry cloud platforms. It really has to do with your organization's digital supply chain and digital distribution network. So if you think about what's going to happen in a lot of our organizations as these digital transformations take place, what are those? Those are basically about using the third platform technologies to create valuable new services, consumer services or B2B services. So it's going to be a lot of code. A lot of code. And in the cloud world, the third platform world, that's APIs, right? And so what we're seeing emerge, if you look at some of the logos up here, we're seeing the emergence of a very interesting type of cloud platform and community. It's not Google, it's not Amazon, it's not Microsoft, it's not IBM, it's not SAP. It is the leaders of every industry. So it is GE. It is Toyota, and it's Mercedes-Benz. It is Johnson Controls in smart homes. It's Illumina in genomics. It is Disney and Sony in entertainment. And what these guys are doing is that they are basically generally on top of the large technology cloud platforms. They're building another layer where they're saying, hey, we are going to collect a lot of industry data. That could be meter data in industry. It could be, health data in healthcare. It could be weather data. It could be, you name it. But basically, it could be telemetry data from industrial equipment. That's what GE's trying to do. And basically aggregate that data, so connect a lot of devices to it. And then, here's the magic, then invite in developers. That's the platform part of it. Invite in developers who can access that data and create new apps and services, that are at the leading edge of innovation in each industry, right? And so what you're looking at is, for lack of a better term, app stores. We're seeing very industry-specific app stores and service hubs emerging. So are there going to be lots of these in each industry? Probably not a lot, but they're still expanding. We believe that by 2018, over half of enterprises are going to create or partner with other companies in their industry to pull these platforms together. There are already about over 100, and we're going to see that grow to about 400 or 500 of these industry platforms by the time we get to 2018. As I said, the vast majority are not going to reinvent platform as a service and infrastructure services. They're going to build right on top of the big name IT clouds. By 2018, remember those leading the class 4 and 5 maturity in digital transformation. Remember the rock stars in digital transformation. By the time we get to 2018, over 80% of those guys are going to be plugging into these digital hubs within their own industry. And what it's about is they will be expanding. They'll be doing it for two reasons. Number one, when they're creating new digital services, they're going to look to these communities to say, well, are there other smart companies in our industry that have created parts and services that I can embed in? And then we'll add our secret sauce. And then at the other end, we're going to use these platforms to distribute out to a much broader community of customers, right? So you see, at the digital innovation level, these companies are going to scale up the number of suppliers and the number of customer channels they have by 100-fold or even 1,000-fold or more. So remember I talked about scaling up. We're going to scale up. It's not just about scaling up in IoT and cloud adoption. It's about scaling up our businesses in supply chain and distribution. Second and last of the two kind of use cases is how we touch the customer. So we're predicting, as you can see here, the next 3 years is going to be a big area in most of your organizations to completely overhaul the way you use third platform technologies to touch customers. You'll wind up using these technologies to expand the number of customers that you touch and do business with by 1,000-fold to 10,000-fold even. And that's going to happen not just because you reach maybe more small and medium-sized businesses, but it's going to be because of those digital APIs going through the digital channels. You'll be able to have your capabilities embedded in many other players' services. You'll have a lot of indirect customers. And a lot of enterprises are using these technologies now to also not just have relationships with their enterprise customers as an enterprise, but with each individual within the enterprise, using social technologies to track those individuals in those companies you do business with. So we're going to scale up the number of touch points we have, and of course social technologies, as I mentioned, will be a key part. Now the last thing, before Trina gives me the hook here, our last prediction is around vendors. And I said earlier, vendors are very important because we don't invent all of our own technologies. We usually source what they provide, and then we build value on top of that. So 2016, 2017, 2018 is going to be a very important time for your suppliers and supplier relationships. We predict that by the time we get to 2020, about 30% or more of IT suppliers we do business with today will no longer exist as we know them. Now, does that mean they'll all go out of business? No. But for any of you who went through the whole transition from first platform to second, does Wang ring a bell? Wang Labs, Data General, DEC, Culinet. These guys were titans of technology. We're going to see the same kind of fallout over the next several years. And I won't go through these, but just lots of examples in the cloud, PaaS space, and wearables, and 3D printing, where we see, vendors, markets converge around a small number of vendors. we'll see emerging markets explode and then collapse in, and then explode again. So, what does this mean for you? It just means it's a very important time to pay close attention to the market trends we just talked about and to be assessing your vendors against that. And as a matter of fact, I would say, if I were thinking about this last prediction, the core of my message here is we need to be following this path of making sure we're in an organization where the CEO has digital transformation at the top of their agenda, that we are making our IT organizations masters at third platform technologies, that we have put cloud first. Cloud is at the core of what we're doing, that we are, this is one of the ones I didn't talk about, expanding our innovation capacity by doubling or tripling the number of developers we have focused on digital transformation. That we are, this is the second one I didn't mention, that we are putting data pipelines into those developers, tripling, quintupling the number of external data sources that we bring into the organization, because that's the fuel of innovation. That we are, looking at all those gadgets at the edge, and we are building cognitive capabilities so we can make sense out of all of that. That we are, where are we? That we are, looking at our supply chain and distribution strategies by leveraging industry cloud platforms, and that we are helping our organization modernize the way we touch and relate with customers, right? So that's what we need to do. I would argue you need to go to your vendors and ask them, are they doing this? Okay, this is the best test. Go to your vendors and say, are you aligning with DX? Are you going to third platform? And I won't go through all of them again, but you get the idea. Are they on this same blueprint that you're on? If they are, they will be great vendors, the best kind of vendor, which is a relevant vendor. And of course, if you follow this path, you'll be the best IT leader you can be for your enterprise, which is a highly relevant enterprise leader. So thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.